Hi everybody, my name is Memory, but we're just going to kind of wait here a couple seconds before we actually introduce you guys to one of our rhinos. Let some people tune in, get your questions in order, because we will be answering several questions throughout the time. So let's just give us a few more seconds just to let a couple more people join us today. All right, hi everybody. Welcome to the Rhino Barn at the Houston Zoo. My name is Memory. I'm one of the host stock keepers here that works with the rhinos, and I'm joined by my friend Heather. We're actually going to be introducing you guys to one of our rhinos named Mumbles. So Mumbles here is 8 years old. He's gonna be turning 9 in just about a month on a day that we like to call Cinco de Rhino. So May 5th will be his 9th birthday. He's about 4,400 pounds, but believe it or not, he is still growing. These guys can actually reach up to about 5,000 pounds. He probably won't reach that for about another year or two. He's just gonna kind of beef up and bulk up a little bit more. And he's not really gonna grow so much height-wise. But Mumbles here is one of our 3 southern white rhinos. We do currently only have males. So right now what he is eating is what we call alfalfa hay. So white rhinos of the rhino family, these guys are the grazers. So they love to eat grass. So we give these guys their primary diet consists of several different kinds of hay, normally Timothy and coastal hay. But what we're feeding here is alfalfa hay. This is kind of like chocolate cake for a rhino. You know, if I were to sit there and eat like 7 pieces of chocolate cake, I'm going to regret it later. So we only really feed it out whenever we're doing tours or training sessions. But we are here behind the scenes as an exclusive tour here so that you guys can see Mumbles hanging out in his home. This is one of our 4-stall barns. And we do generally only bring these guys in the mornings to give them some breakfast so that we can go out on exhibit and clean the exhibit and maintenance it. These guys, obviously, because they are so large, they are what we call protective contact animals, which means that we don't actually go inside with them. Just because even though they look really big and slow, they can actually move really fast. Believe it or not, rhinos can actually run up to 30 miles per hour, and they can spin on a dime. So for our own safety, we never go inside with them. So what Heather is doing here right now, she's asking him to do some of our behavior. So like I said, these guys are so large. We are asking them to kind of help us out and participate in a couple voluntary behaviors. Now Jean has a question of how long is their horn? So that's a really good question, Jean. It honestly kind of depends on the rhino. So rhino horn is made up of keratin, which is the same material that makes up your hair and your fingernails. And just like our hair and fingernails, it grows constantly throughout their lives. So the rhinos will rub it down and shave it to the shape that they desire by rubbing it on rocks and logs and whatnot. So no 2 rhino horns are really the same length. Sometimes they'll be about 6 feet. Sometimes our 3 boys tend to keep their horns pretty short at about 1.5 feet or 2. Now, if anybody else has questions, feel free to comment below, and we will get to those as best as we can. And Anna has a really awesome question of how many species of rhinos are there. So the southern white rhino is one of 5 species of rhinos, and each rhino is in their own class of critically endangered list. So white rhinos here are actually doing the best number-wise. They number at about 20,000, and they are considered not near threatened animals. So these guys are illegally poached for the rhino horn, because several cultures believe that rhino horn has medicinal value or can be an aphrodisiac and whatnot. If you were to total up all 5 species of rhinos in the world, there'd maybe only be about 27,000 rhinos left in the entire world. Now, Monique has a really awesome question. Are they related to dinosaurs? So even though these guys are very prehistoric animals, or they look very prehistoric, they actually are not really related to dinosaurs. Their closest living relatives, believe it or not, are actually horses, zebras, and tapers. Now, another behavior that we are asking him to do right now is just kind of to move back a little bit and kind of reposition himself. In a couple of minutes here, we'll actually line him up on his side so that you guys can see how incredibly impressive these guys are. There is not an ounce of fat on them. They are solid muscle. Unfortunately, rhinos have been given that name as being aggressive animals, but if you can see, his eyes are actually really tiny. So he has pretty bad eyesight. They can only really see about 30 to 40 feet in front of them. So they really rely on their sense of hearing and their sense of smell. Now, Jessica has a really good question. What is their lifespan? So these guys can actually live up into their late 30s and 40s, and sometimes on rare occasions their 50s. White rhinos are generally very hardy animals. Not a lot can really take them down. Obviously, the younger ones are a little bit more prone to being vulnerable to predators in Africa. But as far as like disease and whatnot, they're super hardy. And Jackie asked, why are the bars so thick? So like I said earlier, these guys are what we call protective contact animals, which means that we don't want to go inside with our rhinos, just because even though they are very sweet animals, we don't want to put ourselves in any kind of danger in case they get startled by something, because honestly, even though they're so big, they are kind of big chickens. So we have the really large bars just kind of to keep us safe and to keep them comfortable. Yeah, and so like I was saying earlier, they are super, super sweet. They do really enjoy the tactile and the scratches from our keepers. Sometimes a happy rhino will show that his tail will curl up, so we'll see if we can get that on, but he might be under his hay. Good boy. That being said though, never go running up to a rhino if you guys ever visit Africa or any other zoo. And Jarvis is asking the question of, can they swim? So these guys honestly aren't the best swimmers. If anything, occasionally we'll see them wading through some deeper waters. As you can see, he is covered in a bunch of mud. And so we do actually provide them with a mud wallow on exhibit. The reason why we have the mud there is it's very important for them to help cool down, because they don't have sweat glands like we do, but they also don't pant like dogs do. So the mud helps them cool down. It also keeps them from getting sunburn on their skin, as well as it's a really good bug repellent, because bugs can't really bite through a nice thick layer of mud here. Now you can see that his skin is very textured in some areas. They are very soft and sort of like under his fat rolls and sort of on his joints and whatnot, but this more exposed stuff here can be up to an inch thick in some parts. And obviously that's just to kind of give him a little bit more protection from the predators in Africa. So they do really, really enjoy this. So we'll see if he's going to show that he loves them. Sometimes they get a little bit more focused on the, he's doing his curl. So a happy rhino has the tail curled up like that. It's not because he's about to go potty or anything. It just is that he's very happy with the tactile. Now, as far as rhinos going potty, they do actually all defecate in one big area called a midden. This is just kind of a way for them to communicate with one another and show their territories. Now, Matt asked, do they mate for life? So not really. Generally what happens is the adult male white rhinos will kind of adopt a territory and they guard it from all the other male rhinos, but the female rhinos can come and go as they please. Sometimes the male will kind of try and keep the female in his territory, but it's kind of her own choice if she wants to leave. Now, if you guys ever see a group of rhinos, we like to call it a crash. So that is actually the official term of a group of rhinos. Pretty simple. Awesome. So again, this is Mumbles. Mumbles is our 4,400 pound rhino here. We do actually have a total of 3 rhinos. His 2 brothers are actually currently on exhibit. Their names are George and Indy. And we're introducing you guys to Mumbles here in our behind the scenes area. So this is kind of a special exclusive look for you guys. But Arcana has a really good question of how fast can they run. So even though rhinos look really big and looks like they would be really slow, These guys can actually move very, very quickly. They can run up to about 30 miles per hour, and they can spin on a dime. So if you listen really closely, you might be able to hear his lips smacking whenever he's eating his food. I'm not gonna lie, it's not really my favorite sound in other species. And Rina's got a really good question talking about food stuff. How much can they eat? So our rhino boys here each rhino goes through anywhere between 60 to about 75 pounds of hay a day. So it's a lot of food to put out, and it's a lot to clean up. Oh. So the stuff that we're feeding him right now, this is called alfalfa hay. This is kind of like chocolate cake for a rhino. So we don't feed it out in too much quantities just because we don't want them to get a tummy ache, but it is sort of a tasty treat for them, and we generally bring it out whenever we're doing tours or training sessions. And Evie has a really awesome question. Can they see colors? So these guys, they do have very limited eyesight. They can only see about 30 to 40 feet in front of them. As far as seeing colors, they can probably see a dull range of colors, maybe like greens and maybe some yellows, just to kind of show that, you know, distinguish what food is compared to water and mud and whatnot. So they probably aren't gonna see bright pinks and blues and purples like we do. And Leedy asks, how does their skin feel? So it kind of depends on where you're scratching on the rhino. And the rhinos do like to be scratched all over. They'll even let us pick eye goobers from their eyes. But the more exposed areas are much more rough and leathery. But on some of the less exposed areas, like the inner thigh, it's actually as soft as the skin on your forearm. So it's super, super baby soft. And it looks like we've got a nice cool birthday shout out. So happy early 7th birthday to Zoe Bennett. I hope you're having an awesome day. I hope you're enjoying seeing Mumbles here. Now Mumbles is still growing. He probably won't be fully grown until he's about 5,000 pounds. Like I said earlier, he's probably about 4,400 pounds right now. So he's not gonna grow so much height-wise, he's just gonna beef up, bulk up a bit. That's my favorite question is, do they make noise? So these guys actually do have a very wide range of vocalizations, anywhere from a grunt to a growl, or the younger ones tend to sort of make a very high-pitched squeal. They generally only make that sound whenever they want attention from their mother or keepers, or if they want food. So very wide range of vocalizations. Sophia asks, what do they prey on? So these guys actually are not predators. They are strictly herbivores. They only eat grass and plants. So honestly, I guess they prey on grass and plants. Now, if you see the horn there, you might see that it looks a little bit fuzzy. So the fuzziness of that horn is, like I said, the horn is made up of keratin, just like our hair and fingernails. And just like your hair, the horn sort of grows from the base, and it kind of grows in these fiber-like strings. And over time, they kind of condense and calcify and make the nice big long horn that we know today. And now, no two horns are gonna look alike because it does grow just like your hair and fingernails. Sometimes the horn can reach about to 6 feet long. Sometimes the boys will rub them down so that they're a little bit shorter. And sometimes, the horns will grow forwards, downwards to the ground, or sometimes the second horn grows up and over the first horn. It's honestly, the rhino horn is kind of like a hairstyle for a rhino, but it is very important in that they need the horn to protect themselves against other rhinos and predators. So Cheryl asked, how tough is their skin? So their skin can actually be up to 1 inch thick in some areas of their body. So it is very, very tough, and it's very difficult for some of those predators to actually bite or claw through the skin. So generally lions and leopards and hyenas want to avoid these guys just because they are so big and tough. not really anything's gonna wanna take on a full-grown rhino. Sometimes, occasionally, maybe a woolly elephant or a hippo at the watering hole, but generally rhinos are left alone in the wild in Africa. Mary Lou asks, where are they found in the wild? That's an awesome question. This particular species of rhino, these guys are the white rhinos. 80% of their population is actually found in the southern regions of Africa. And like I said earlier, these guys are numbering at about 20,000 out in the wild. And that sounds like a really big number, but once upon a time we were actually in the hundreds of thousands. So we are seeing their populations decline because of illegal poaching. And the poachers are going after these guys just because of the rhino horn. Okay, and we got another question here from George, which also, we do have a rhino named George, but he's on exhibit right now. So he's the brother to Mumbles. But George asks, do they live in groups? So of the 5 rhino species, the white rhinos here are probably the most social. They're not gonna live in large groups, or herds or crashes, what we like to call them. But occasionally you'll see the females hanging out with one another, probably no more than 4 or 5 females. Ew, there's that open mouth. Sometimes, but like I said, the males are generally a little bit more solitary. And Sarah asks, how do they sleep? So these guys, like I said earlier, they are like giant puppy dogs. A lot of times they will just sleep lying down on the ground. They are so large, they know that they don't really need to stand up to sleep because nothing's gonna wanna take them on. And Christy asks, why are they called white rhinos versus black rhinos? That's a really awesome question, Christy. So there are 2 different species of rhinos that live in Africa. There are the white rhinos, which is what we have here, and the black rhinos. Now, it's not because of the skin color. These guys are actually both gray in coloration. It's just that they are totally different species, but it's more so based on their different diet source. So the best way to tell a white rhino from a black rhino is that the white rhinos have these really wide square lips, whereas the black rhinos have the pointed prehensile lip that helps them pluck the leaves off the trees, because that's what they eat. And like I said, white rhinos are grazers. Michelle asks, what color are his eyes? So his eyes are a very interesting, very pretty color is what we like to say. But they're sort of like a very dark, deep brown color. And then they actually have sort of a lighter blue coloration around it. And Tiffany asks, could their horns grow back? So that's a really awesome question. As far as whenever the poachers are cutting off the horns, if the horns are cut too close to the face, it's kind of like your fingernail. If you rip your fingernail off accidentally, sometimes it doesn't grow back. It's the same thing for the rhino horns. Sometimes if it's too close to the face, it might not grow back. But if it's like the tip and the tip of it just falls off in a rhino fighting session or whatnot, it'll grow back pretty quickly. Now these guys are born without horns. They actually start growing a horn at about a month old. And by the time they're about 3 years old, they'll develop a pretty good sized horn. But these guys, Now, Nolan asked a good question of, do they have teeth? So these guys don't have any teeth in the front of their mouth. They don't have any of those front incisors that we see, but they do still have the back molars. So they have 24 teeth total in their mouths. They have 6 on top and 6 on bottom on each side, and they're sort of like really good grinders to grind all that grass and fiber down. Now Dory asked, does he have toenails? So if you look down at his feet, you'll see that he has 3 toes on each foot, and behind the toes there's sort of a soft shock absorbing pad there. We're gonna line him up a little bit more forward this way.
Mumbles back.
It takes a little bit of repositioning a rhino to get him where you want him to go. But they do have toenails, and it's very similar to kind of a horse hoof on the outside with a hoof wall. But very different from a horse is that they have that soft shock absorbing pad. So whenever these guys are running, it makes sure that it's not putting too much pressure on their joints. And honestly, it absorbs a lot of the sound. So these guys can run at 30 miles per hour and you don't even hear them coming because they're so quiet. Deborah asks, how long are they pregnant for? So their gestation period is pretty long. It's about 16 months long. And generally, once that first calf is born, he or she will hang around mom's side for about 3 years. They're actually weaned at about 1.5 years, but they stick around for a little bit longer just to kind of develop some social skills and hang out a little bit longer. All right, so that about wraps it up for us today. thank you guys so much for coming out, sorry. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and joining us in one of our behind the scenes look at our rhinos. If you guys are interested in meeting a rhino up close, go to our website at houstonzoo.org and you can follow some links from there. You might also see that there's a link on there for the emergency fund. We are really missing you guys' presence and company here. So if you guys still want to continue to support us, any money or donations that are given go to help support us care for our animals, and also goes to help and support animals in the wild and our conservation partners overseas. So thank you guys all for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for Natural Encounters.